Every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is Rebecca Jernigan, your tour guide into discoveries, coming to you live from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web, satellite, and podcast. Let's journey together into the realms of the known to the unknown in search of enlightenment, knowledge, and truth. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet Earth. This is your host, Rebecca Jernigan, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca right here on wolfspiritradio.com and also Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B. I'm going to kind of switch it up a little bit tonight and let everyone know that for tonight we have a mad painter who is engineering the show from Revolution Radio. I want to thank him for stepping in. JP has taken the night off. We're wishing him well and hopefully for a very quick and speedy recovery. And so we're going to move right forward here and just remind everyone that Wolf Spirit Radio and Freedom Slips are both totally listener supported. So donations really do make a difference. Please go to my website, that's journeyswithrebecca.com, and check out the archives. My upcoming guests, along with their topics. You can also set up an appointment. I have some newly revised sessions and the mentorship program that can certainly assist in these new energies that are here. I have one opening left, and payment plans are available if you need them. And there's always the free newsletter to sign up for. It's going to give you some of the latest information if you don't go to the website. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And my book, Night Experiences, Visions, Prophecies, has arrived on the Kindle version, as I told you all last week. We're still having some difficulties with the print version, but we are ever so close, and I do anticipate it being up before the end of this week for the paperback version of Night Experiences, Visions, and Prophecies. So please, I hope that you can support me by getting this book, because I will tell you it will open your eyes. Now, on for tonight's show, I have an extremely unique man joining me on the show, and he has titled this Out of This World with Pane, Andov. Now, I'm going to give you a little background information on what's in store for all of you tonight. I had a chat session with Pane a few days ago, and we set it up for a 15-minute call. And well over 2 hours later, we were still talking, and we did not even cover a third of his information. So hang on tight tonight, because there's going to be a ton of information coming your way. Now, we're going to start out in 1980, because during a walk with his brother, his life took an unusual turn after experiencing a close encounter of the fourth kind. And both of the brothers were mesmerized by the sight of an approaching alien flying craft emanating a strong orange and yellow-red pulsating light. And after getting within a distance of less than 50 meters, the object released a very powerful flash of bright light. In a few seconds, they both realized that somehow they had been teleported inside of an alien craft. Now, the author was not hurt in any way by these beings, but they did run tests, and when the tests came back, I guess, satisfactory for them, they incited a procedure that increased his brain capacity in some strange way. Now, Andov felt that they were missing or were rewiring his brain, putting in some kind of connection so they would know where he was at all times, and in case of emergency, they would be able to protect him from the quote-unquote others. Now, most important, Pane was told that they have altered his DNA functionality so he could experience and understand certain things. Now, both the author and his brother were missing for about 2 hours, and after they returned home, Pane started manifesting his telepathic abilities and having spontaneous out-of-body experiences. But not long after that, an unpleasant incident occurred with his mother, which resulted him and forced him to stop using those abilities. Now, the entire close counter of the fourth kind is published in the volume 3 of the Awakening series. And lovely Vanessa in the chat room is also going to be posting the website address throughout this show. And Pane, when he comes on, is also going to be talking a little bit about it. But let's get into a little bit more. The human effort to answer the fundamental questions of existence. Who are we? Where did we come from? What are we doing here? And equally important, where are we going? What is this place we call universe? And are we alone? Considering how old and how big the universe is, there's a high probability that the human species is only one of trillions out there. Furthermore, most of the species are probably so evolved that they have surpassed the limitations of the physical dimension and use technological advances that enable them to easily move between these dimensions. Now, the ability of the general public to grow and expand its knowledge about what is happening inside our solar system is of tremendous importance. One of the alternative ways that humans can utilize to see into the immaterial part of the universe is through controlled out-of-body experiences, also known as astral projection, understanding the big picture and our responsibilities to assist us in the process of the Great Awakening. I know you guys are going to have questions tonight. I don't know that we're going to have time to actually open up the mics or the chat room for questions, but if you do have them during the course of the show, please place your questions in all caps. So if I can work it in, I will certainly ask those questions of Pane. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome him to the show. Good evening, Pane.
Good evening, Rebecca. It's great to be part of your show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is just absolutely most fabulous to have you here. Seriously, I'm just thrilled. After our conversation, and I told people about that on Skype, after our conversation, I was just blown away by the wealth of information that you shared with me. And again, I wasn't exaggerating when I told everyone tonight that we only covered about a third of what kind of material that you have, and you've still got more than that, but it's just fabulous. So I'm going to kind of let you roll with this, Pane. I kind of set it up where your first experience when you were 7 years old back in 1980, where you had a close encounter of the fourth kind. So after that, you displayed a lot of different abilities, and there was a lot of different research, and you went on to do a lot of extraordinary things. So wherever you think that you want to start sharing the information with the people, I'm going to let you roll with it.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I will just briefly go back when I was 7. That was the first encounter with the extraterrestrial intelligence for me. It was actually 37 years ago. It was a long time. And my brother used to train martial arts very close to the place that we were living at the time. And from time to time, he was taking me with him, and I was enjoying watching him. And one night in 1980, it was a crystal clear night sky and was a full moon. I noticed that there is another spherical object very close to the moon, and as a 7-year-old child, I didn't know what to make of it, and I asked my brother how come there could be two moons, and I didn't got any response. After a couple of seconds, I turned back towards him, and I noticed that he's actually staring into the object, and the object was emanating yellow, orange, and red pulsating light, and it was getting closer and closer. And I noticed that this is a serious situation because literally he was scared to death. And as the object approached, I noticed that it's like a burning fire around it, like some sort of plasma shield around it, and there was a white flash. The moment the white flash appeared, I noticed that I am having difficulty of breathing, and also I felt weightless. It didn't last long, and then the whiteness started to disappear, so to speak, and I noticed that there's some kind of silhouette, through the opening that it's visible to me. One can only imagine the adrenaline rush, when I literally recognize that those, beings are not human at all, And in the same moment, I started to hear them in my head. They were transmitting on my original Macedonian language, not to be afraid that they are not here to hurt us. And then they took us into the spaceship, and once when we passed through a corridor, we entered like some form of chamber with a dark type of like a glass, windows. We couldn't see through, but everything around me that I was able to notice was made of some kind of plastic, and there were no hardware, no computer screens, no mouses, no similar stuff like we are used to. It was all just they were able to literally control the matter with their mental abilities, with their thoughts, and all of a sudden, there are all kinds of light, and they're appearing like a virtual reality screens. With the symbols that were switching on and off and similar stuff. And they said that they need to run some tests to be sure. And one of the creatures just made an effort, and there was like a plateau, so to speak, like a lying plateau, like some sort of bed. I remember that they referred to lie on this bed on a Macedonian language, and as soon as I actually lie down, they said, "Don't worry, it's not gonna hurt, and it's not gonna last. It's not gonna take long time, And then, as they looked towards the ceiling of the room, of the chamber that we were at, there was like a very strong, powerful source of light. And then I closed my eyes, and the moment I closed my eyes, I noticed that all my clothing is gone. None of the creatures touched me in any physical way, so to speak, but as soon as I closed my eyes, I started to see and to feel like a hotter and colder sensations. And then it was like a beams of light that were going, on my skin. And in later years, I understood that they were literally having the ability to scan the cosmic ID or the DNA signature. So what I mean by that, for example, we are not physical bodies, of course. We are immortal life force or consciousness, and we often travel from body to body and having a different biological experiences. And as soon as we have those experiences, all those are stored into the immaterial part of the DNA. And these beings were at the technological development. They were able to literally penetrate through that database of the immaterial DNA, and they were searching for certain experiences, for certain qualities, how much psionic force I can utilize, what are the future aspiration of my soul or the consciousness, and similar stuff. And as soon as those sensations stopped, I started to feel that they have moved towards my head. and the right part of the head especially, I started to feel there is a concentration of energy. What they were actually doing, they were creating a nanotechnological device or implant. Usually people call them alien implant, and they were rewriting my brain patterns, creating new neurons, and similar stuff. And they said that they will do something to me that will help me to experience certain things. From that experience, I will learn about those things, and I'll be able to pass the knowledge to the people. And as soon as that was done, I remember that they were happy with the test, and I didn't see my brother anywhere, but didn't feel any problem with it. And then they said that they're going to return me back home. As they were the entire craft, where the entire chamber actually where we were at that point, become like a transparent. I was able to see Skopje, my birth city, from above, and they said that they were very glad that they have found before the others did. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but I perfectly know that there is not just one, but there are so many different other species which are in the solar system, and not everyone is positive and kind towards the human species. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And as soon as I was seeing that we were approaching towards the suburb that we were living at the time, there was another flash, and the next moment, second or two, practically, I literally become aware that I'm already teleported in the room. The first thing that it came to my mind was what happened with my brother, because we were both together. And I quickly jumped out of the bed, ran into his room, and I noticed that he is sitting in his bed shaking, and there was a blood coming from his nostril opening, and he was just repeating, what happened. My mother went into the room, and she started to freak out, so to speak, and she started to ask how you guys get in. The main entrance, the main door is closed, and we were out for about 2 hours. And the coming blood from the nostril opening of my brother really scared her a lot. Obviously, they did the test, but he didn't pass. But he stabilized after a couple of hours. But this thing was just the beginning. The night and the next night, I started to feel strange when I was moving, let's say, towards some sharp corner, like a corner of the dining table. Without touching it, I started to feel that something is not right, like it's cutting me. So, which means my aura became highly sensitive, and from time to time, like tuning into a radio station, like a different frequency, I noticed that I was able to hearing the thoughts of my brother and my mother, which was quite odd. But the most impressive thing that was happening is that in the middle of night, I started to feel strange, as like a buzzing sound. And then all of a sudden, I was fully awake, but I was like a 20, 30, 50 centimeters higher than I usually sleep. And I turned around and I noticed myself lying down in the bed. And that really scared me. The first time I thought that this is it, I'm dying. And I noticed that it started to happen again and again. And in the later years, I understood that this is what people call exteriorization of the consciousness, or the so-called out-of-the-body experience, or astral projection, where the consciousness leaves the physical body, And it took a couple of attempts until I got encouraged to pass through the ceiling. And as soon as I passed through the ceiling, it was just like in movies. I was able to see the entire neighborhood, from above. But the quite interesting thing was that there was like an orb of light, like about 50 meters away from me, always following me. In a sense, it's like it was babysitting me. I noticed telepathically that they are pleased what is happening and how things are developing. But all those manifestations, sometimes the out of the body experiences lasted a couple of seconds, sometimes around 5 minutes, but it was always obviously happening under their control. And After the incident with my mother, unfortunately, at the time, we don't have much time to go into full details, but I was at the neighbor's house and I started to see multidimensionally with my physically eyes open. And part of me was seeing what is happening in the room there. And another vision was showing the house that we were living at the time in fire, burning and the smoke coming out. And I started to make a scene, and she didn't believe me at the time, but after a real big, argument, so to speak, she decided to check. And as soon as we approached the house that we were living at the time, she noticed that there is a huge smoke coming out of it. Luckily the neighbors came. They put the fire down. There was no extreme big damage, but that was it. That was the breaking point for a parent, who is facing a situation where her child is manifesting something which is absolutely out of the normal, so to speak. It was fully paranormal stuff that was happening, and she started to threaten me that she will take me to some surgeon for a hospital or somewhere else just to see what kind of devil got into me. Similar things. And it really scared me at the time, and I had to back off. So I didn't feel any sharp edges, or I can do telepathic stuff or astral projection. Pretty much everything got normal for the next 7 years. But it wasn't supposed to end like that. After 7 years, in 1988, she took me to a place which is called Lepoglava, which is about 200 km away from Zagreb, and in Croatia. And her brother, my uncle, was very skilled into Tibetan meditation, into Kundalini yoga. He had a huge library of books, and he started to telling me about Tibetan lamas, about their astral projections, about the yogis that can do physical levitation and similar stuff. And he actually transferred me the basic of the meditation, and something inside of me clicked me so profoundly that I started to literally meditate, a lot. I started from 20-30 minutes, and then I pushed to a few hours, and then sometimes it was over 8 hours into lotus position. And I started to awaken the so-called Kundalini energy. And as soon as it awakened, it started to change or alter the state of my consciousness, so to speak. And it was a full year before I literally self-induced the out-of-the-body experience. It happened one night, and I started the training because I was using a so-called 7-symbol technique, which is done after a total relaxation of the entire physical body, which means you have to move the chi energy through the entire body until it gets to the point which is very relaxed, but the consciousness is extremely sharp. But then you apply the 7-symbol technique, and it takes you to a trance-like state, which literally the magnetic bond between the astral body and the physical body weakens to the point of separation. I didn't separate it at that particular time, but after I fell asleep, I used the dream control. And then there was a Kundalini energy which manifested by the buzzing sound. I entered like a sleeping paralysis state. As soon as I managed to pull my astral body out, it was like climbing the Mount Everest for me. It was just seeing my physical body lying on the bed, and the entire room like it is, and similar things. It was just extraordinary, passing through walls and, seeing the suburb that I was living at the time, It was just amazing. But I wanted to go to space, I had my fun. The astral travels were very, very, very short at the beginning, from, let's say, 20-30 seconds, sometimes 3-4 minutes or so. And then I started to lose control. My concentration broke down, and I was waking up physically. And after exploration, of the basic surrounding area, the local area, I really had the hunger, so to speak, to reach space. And I started to fly towards the space, but every time when I hit about 40 kilometers from the surface of the planet, I was hitting like an invisible wall, like an energetic barrier. and the entire astral projection cut off. And it happened to me so many times I didn't know what to make of it. And then there was another approach from the extraterrestrials. In other words, they started to communicate again, telepathically when I was out of the body. And in one occasion, they transferred the knowledge to me that there is a way that I can depart the physical body with a different host. So, which means I call this different host a higher quality astral body. So what I mean by this, most of the people that experience OB or out of the body experience or astral projection, so to speak, they experience with a default astral body, which it's very good. It's nice. You can do some flying, pass through walls, see things and so on and so forth. But it doesn't have the right performances. So I also learned that the planet Earth is kept in some form of quarantine, which means there are two barriers. One is about 40 Ks, which prevents actually the human consciousness to move out of the planet. That's why people most of the time they dream only of rivers, of houses, cities, mountains, the earthly stuff. But rarely they dream that they are seeing the Earth from above, Saturn or Jupiter or Sun. Very rarely, maybe in some cases where there is an alien abduction going on or similar things. And another shield, plasma shield, which I have learned about, it's about over 7,000 miles, which is pretty far away. But what I'm trying to say is that they said that once when I penetrate the sleeping paralysis state, because what is sleeping paralysis state? Our consciousness is the center of everything. That's our awareness, so to speak. But it's fused to 7 carriers or hosts or bodies, if you will, out of which the physical body is, of course, the most densest one, the most material. And the second one is so-called the etheric body. That's the body which is interwoven with the physical body, and where all those chakras and energetic channels, if you will, are interconnected. And those, according to the ancient Eastern traditions, there are 72,000 nadis or energetic channels which are inside that etheric body, and when the Kundalini energy awakens, it actually goes through those 7 centers, which are connected to the spinal cord. But nevertheless, when that happens, there is, in many cases, there is like either high pitch or eventually a high buzzing sound in the ears, which is not physically heard, but the consciousness can hear it. But there is a disability of movement. You cannot move much, but there is also a problem. You cannot pull your astral body out either. It's not just physical restriction of movement, but they said that as soon as the energy goes towards the forehead, you have the access to the astral dimension, which means you can separate from the physical body. You can see, your physical body lying on the bed, very similar, to the near-death experience, But they said, don't exit the physical body yet. Once when the Kundalini becomes active or the energy becomes active, focus on something which is most divine in yourself. Whatever that, everyone has something which resonates profoundly. And I started to focus on a cosmic love, on a equalness, on a brotherhood and similar stuff, And I noticed a slight difference, in the vibration, which was only the beginning. After 5 seconds, I released so much emotion, and then the Kundalini became wild. It literally exploded. Instead of seeing only the darkish bluish light, which was because I have done this thousands of times, was a normal, emanation or effect of the basic Kundalini charge. I was seeing rainbow lights literally coming out of me. And in the moment I felt that it's enough, I departed the physical body. The difference was huge, Rebecca. Before, when I was departing my physical body, I was able to see my physical body, and the room and everything. But this time, all the room, despite the fact it's 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night, the entire room was illuminated because the aura of the astral body was shining and illuminating everything. With a lower quality astral body or with a default astral carrier, sometimes you get stuck. Part of the astral body, gets out. The rest of the astral body doesn't want to go out. It's stuck. Or sometimes the astral travelers report, getting stuck in some wall or ceiling or similar stuff. With a higher quality astral body, the clarity of the thoughts, is just unbelievable. The moment I thought that I will go through the wall, I didn't even finish the thought in my consciousness. I was already out, and then I jumped because at the time I was living in an apartment in the 4th floor in a suburb which is called Novo Lisic, actually in the original Macedonian language, in part of the Skopje in Macedonia. And then as I actually standed, on the grass, I just put my fist on and took off straight up, and I was going. There was so much energy, going, and I penetrated through. The moment I penetrated through, it was just amazing. I noticed the entire planet from above, and that was something which you can definitely have to experience to realize. By the way, for people that are actually holding the opinion that the earth is flat, I can confirm from my own experience, that's not the case, and the moment I was able to see the entire part of the Europe, from space, it was just so amazing. And there were like a huge orbs of light that were very happy, from one side. But immediately I noticed a different presence. There were crafts like black discs, which were very unhappy with the progress, they have violated some kind of treaty, so to speak. There is some form of agreement between the extraterrestrial intelligence, which is also present on the planet and in the solar system. And the vibration that I was getting from them was not positive at all. But the orbs of light, were very protective, and they cut off the experiences, at the beginning, when all those a dangerous situation began. And from here, for me, become a very big learning, curve, because I was learning from direct observation. Previously, when I was starting with this Tibetan, yoga or Buddhism and similar stuff, we took, let's say, a year or so, to assimilate all those books, materials. I was literally grasping everything, that I could get my hands on, just to learn more about the Asian tradition, about Nepal, Tibet, India, Sri Lanka, their ways of living, and similar stuff. But this was the real stuff, And at the time, there was no internet, the internet was still in the development, there were no one was talking about. Only was Eric von Däniken and a few other people, on the TV, and no one was telling anything, But I noticed that as soon as I departed the physical body with my higher quality astral body, it's not just the perception that increased, but I was able to see the crafts, which I was not able to see previously with my default astral body. And I started to notice that in every second, there is a huge traffic of UFOs going in and out inside the planet. And I started to follow them, just to see what's going on. And I noticed that in many cases, the so-called shadow government is fully aware of their presence. As soon as the objects appear, and they sending a military jets or helicopters, and try to intercept it, and similar things. And some of the objects, like a cylindrical type of crafts. Some had a texture, and the other had only a plasma shield, because we are dealing with type 2 and type 3 category of civilization in our solar system, which I will go into a bit later, tonight. So the thing is, the objects went directly either into the oceans or directly into the volcanic openings, which was quite odd for me. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, because everything that I understood at the time is that the molten lava will literally crush everything. But obviously they were using the plasma shield to protect from the heat. They were heat resistant. But that was not the most important thing that was happening to me. I noticed that some of the cylindrical crafts and other type of spherical crafts, they are producing smaller orbs. And I got curious what is happening. And those smaller orbs sometimes were producing probably millions of those orbs that we are coating them on infrared or similar stuff. But some of them were going into people's homes, in the apartments, in the houses. And I noticed that literally they not just violating the human privacy, but they are doing so many things, which is even difficult even to tell on this show without causing an emotional trauma. And then it became really, really serious for me. So that's I started to research, more, to experience, to follow them all. And what I discovered was quite amazing, But I noticed that in many cases, the first thing that was very, very unclear to me was why the deception. Why don't they openly land on the ground, show themselves and similar things, And I noticed that when you are outside, actually I was doing an experiment. As I was on the astral plane, I noticed that there was a huge alien craft hovering above the area where I was living, and then it was accessible for me if I went to the balcony, and checked it with the physical eyes. I immediately returned to my physical body, jumped out of the bed, went into the balcony, and where the alien craft was there was like a cloud, and sometimes there was like a holes in the clouds, with a purple or eventually rainbow type of emanation, which obviously showed me that they are cloaked, they're observing us, and it's not just that. I noticed that they were collecting a huge number of orbs. So by orbs, what is happening? Because we are literally at this stage where we are utilizing mechanical means. They're at the stage where they're utilizing a plasma. And by plasma, they can control everything. They can, for example, if we want to observe a certain area, we are sending a drone to observe the area. But through computers and internet and similar stuff, we can see it. But instead of doing that, they can literally reprogram or create or actually install advanced alien software into the orb, so they can do surveillance. They can actually upload or download data from an alien implant. They can reprogram the implant. They can influence thoughts and similar stuff. And there are so many things which were happening, on the time, at the time when I was seeing it. Was quite interesting, And I noticed that. There is like a hierarchy, and there is conflict between the species. On quite a few occasions, I noticed that there is like a fight between the UFOs. Sometimes it just ended like that. In some cases, the UFO was disintegrated completely. It is some, because as far as I was able to understand, after so many years of astral traveling and into this stuff, in every particular moment, we are dealing probably from 2,000 to 3,000 species into the solar system, and many of those are only transiting here, but there are also species which are more or less permanent here, on the 4 moons of Jupiter, on Saturn, Uranus, Venus, Mars, and Earth, of course, because we are sharing this planet, and only now, after the ancient times, after the conflict that took place, probably around 12,000 years ago between Atlantis and Lemuria, so to speak, we are starting to get the technology through infrared, ultraviolet, night vision cameras of their presence. So in other words, when you go on site and you look, with your physical eyes, with just 5 senses, so to speak, you cannot see much. But if you introduce technology like infrared, ultraviolet lenses, or eventually night vision, from time to time you start to see objects, flying information, moving in straight angles, and similar stuff appearing and disappearing, And I didn't know what to make of it at the beginning, but now it's crystal clear to me that unfortunately, like the humans are seeing the animal, species, they are seeing us as inferior, especially the negative ones, and they are seeing us as a resource in so many different ways, from crossbreeding to genetics, and similar things, So I started to go further. I noticed that as soon as I was able to penetrate through the barrier, the 40K barrier that I mentioned before, many of the objects were flying directly into the moon, or eventually they were coming directly from the moon. And in some cases, I was noticing like a crater opening up, and they pumped it out, or eventually they just materialized and started flying in towards Earth. But the most unpleasant discovery that I made was like a dark type of plasma creatures. They were extreme, something what people, let's say, caught on camera, like rods, and similar things. That type of existence, but they were penetrating the Earth atmosphere and literally penetrating in. And I started to observe them from a safe distance, because I noticed that it's absolutely not smart to approach them in any way in astral form. I noticed that they're also collecting energy. So what I mean by energy, I will make this short example. There was one young couple, and their baby was sleeping in the other room, but they were observing the baby with a baby monitor that was able to pick up the infrared. And there was another couple, that came that evening, and they chat and similar stuff. But in one particular moment, the mother noticed that there was appearance of an orb levitating above the child. And they got interested, and they started to see, to monitor, what is happening. How come the orb is not disappearing? Because many people believe that the orbs are just dust, which is not absolutely the case, So as the orb was glowing, I you can notice that the baby is becoming agitated. It starts to move around. Previously, it was sleeping very, very calmly. And then in that particular moment, when the orb started to glow, and it was there at least for a few minutes, the baby started to move around, obviously moving away from the orb. So as it started to move, even it woke up in one moment, and it hit the head into the wall, and that's when the mother had enough, and she jumped into the room and took the child. But the orb was still there, and then it disappeared. So where I'm getting at with this? So certain entities out there, for example, human species can exist on veggies or eventually on animals, but it all depends of the wakefulness of the consciousness. The more the consciousness is awake, it understands that consuming animal flesh is wrong. Even the plants has consciousness, but unfortunately with the genetic makeup that we have today, we have absolutely no choice. There are also meat eaters from the extraterrestrials, but that's not the end of the story. there are also entities that feed off dark emotional energies. So what I'm trying to say, they have the technology, especially the type 2 civilization, they have the technology to create the plasma to program to perform certain tasks. In this particular case with the little baby, as the plasma orb came towards the physical body, it started to extract the fears of the baby, and in the same time it started to project holographic reality. So the consciousness of the baby started to see things which are not nice and scary to him. And as soon as that started to happen, the energy emanation which is happening in that particular time is suffering, and the orbs literally absorb that suffering signature, that energy, and as soon as they glow to high degree, they are charged, they move away. And I have observed this for years in the astral dimension, try to figure it out why they are doing this. And as they are fully charged, they group themselves sometimes in full line, and they took off, or eventually there is like a beam of light which appears with electricity, and they absorb them all. And after they are absorbed, they are stored in some kind of collector's tubes or containers, so to speak. And then they are taken to Saturn and a few other places where the type 2 or type 3, especially type 3, dark civilization is feeding of that emotional energy. I know that this is far away to take, but this is what my conclusions are after all these years of astral traveling, you know. And the thing is, sometimes especially the cylindrical craft, you know, which has like a couple of lights with it, you know, and as soon as they, especially the one in China, which was very famous, you know, the craft started to produce lights everywhere. And many people don't understand why that light is happening in the first place, because it doesn't scan anything particular. It's just scanning the ground, but it's not scanning the ground. It's absorbing those orbs. And I really encourage all those people that will listen to your show, you know, to apply night vision camera or infrared or ultraviolet, you know, cameras to observe, you know, and try to record what I'm saying, you know. So there is huge amount of things which are going on. And the quite interesting thing is that most of those ET civilizations are hovering above the thunderstorms. In other words, once when the thunderstorms appear and the lightnings, they discharge plasma. And this plasma is utilized by those crafts, you know. It is collected, and they have the technology to change the plasma, you know, to different types of plasma, and to control it, you know, to utilize in different ways. Another interesting thing which what that ETs told me is that they're using the orbs for global surveillance. So, for example, we use the internet with our technological development at the moment, you know, like a cables which are connected with fiber optics and so on and so forth, you know, they're all in one network, and that's how it works in a nutshell. But they are able to literally using the orbs, they can see absolutely everything, and the moon is a gigantic space station. So that's the only logical conclusion that one can make after so much research. And obviously there is a signal which is coming from the Saturn, and the Saturn is very connected, because there is a huge, enormous cigar-shaped UFOs, you know, that are observed into the Saturn system. They're creating the rings, because the rings of Saturn served as some form of antenna, which they transmit a certain signal, and through the Phoebe ring, which is the most widest, the most biggest, you know, ring of Saturn, they are literally transmitting a signal towards the moon. As the signal goes towards the moon, they are accepted by the towers. They are huge as far as I was able to see. The towers are getting that signal, and it's amplified and it's transmitted towards Earth. In other words, they're hacking the astral plane of planet Earth. There are 7 planes in the universe from what we were able to understand. And those, why I'm saying 7 planes, is not just, something that came out from the books or similar stuff. So usually, let's say if we want to take the scientific approach, they said that our universe consists of 3 parts: the so-called ordinary matter that we can observe, the so-called dark matter, which is clearly there, but it's difficult to observe, and even more dark energy. So the ratio between the ordinary matter, which is 4.9%, towards the rest is the dark matter is 26.8%, and the dark energy is 68.3%, according to the latest measurements. But it's not just that. It's the thing is the physical matter, or the ordinary matter, is the physical universe, or the physical plane of existence, the physical world. And then in the dark matter, they found 5 densities, 5 different densities once when they were scanned, because the dark matter research teams mapped about 50 individual galaxy clusters, and the average galaxy cluster, and based on a current dark matter model, is literally unbelievably to determine, and there is like 5 densities in dark matter. But what is quite interesting is that the dark energy constant. There are different densities, in that part. So what we are talking about, 7 planes of existence. So once when you see what the NASA and other space agencies are showing us, through the latest technological achievements, so to speak, at least in the public arena, is showing us that the entire universe is interconnected with filaments of galaxies, and there is every galaxy is part of the supercluster, and superclusters are part of even larger structure and similar stuff. So the first thing that was quite interesting is that I asked the ETs, how come the space is so dark? Once when you see, at the night and you go in astral dimension, you can see the dark, and they said because we are living in a dark area of space, which is not the case everywhere. And even lately, the NASA is starting to say that there is a high probability that we are living in a cosmic void, which means between those filaments, of galaxies, and superclusters and similar stuff, they are like a gaps. It's not empty space. It's just the space there. It's more darker, and the stars are a lot more dimmer, And they said that's a area which quite often, because everything in the universe is polarized, like light and dark and similar stuff. Pretty much the evolution of the life forms in the universe has spread in 2 polarities, one positive and one negative, so to speak, and the ones that are negative are mostly concentrated towards those dark voids, Just to give you one quick parallel, for example, if you take, for example, the Egyptian Book of Death and the Tibetan Book of Death, they're both describing instructions how the soul can pass through the dark void, which is quite interesting, And in other words, the more the someone moves through space towards those filaments, network of energy, the more lighter it becomes. It's not that dark like in the night sky, and that's where the most divine creatures exist. And this universe, after the original makeup of the great cosmic designer, so to speak, which obviously, because what we can see, there is a fractal pattern and intelligence into everything that we have seen. So, which means it's a intelligent design by using a cymatic pulse of sound and frequency. this universe was created, and as I mentioned, there are 7 planes of existence which are happening at the moment. It's quite interesting, Rebecca.
Absolutely. Let me just stop you there for just a moment. We're getting pretty close to break time. Now, we did lose the one radio station. We will be back on with that here, I'm sure, shortly. And so I'm guessing that we have about 2 minutes before we would actually go on break. And in that case, there was a couple of questions that came in, Pane, that I wanted to kind of have you think about for you to answer, because you talked about, and by the way, I'd love to have an off radio conversation with you about the 7 planes of existence and some other things. I've written some notes, but let's real quick, let's get back to the civilizations. You talked about the spacecraft going into the volcanoes, probably using a thermoplasma shield, as well as the ones going down into the ocean. Well, we, as human beings, we're unable to go on into the ocean yet. We have not had our technology perfected, unless, of course, we reverse engineered, and some of that is ours, because of the pressure of the water. And so, are there civilizations actually in our oceans, or are they even going below the ocean floor, the things that we can't see? And then the next thing is also about the civilizations underground. That would be those that would be going through the volcanoes. And, I know that there's tubes, and those tubes can act like tunnels that go all through this entire globe. We do have a 1-minute thing here, so I'm pretty close. So we've only got about 30 seconds left. So I do want to make everyone aware of your book real quick before we go on this next break, because I think it's really important that people know. It's puretranquilitypublishing.com. So please check it out. In the meantime, you guys stay with us. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have so much more with Pane and all about this conversation. Stay with us.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a 5th-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitors' peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you.
Why am I here?
You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here.
You haven't answered my question.
The Matrix is older than you know. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation.
Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lasan.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically autonomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Hello, this is Maggie Rose McGrath of The Concord Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays.
As well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, everyone, welcome back. You're listening to Journeys with Rebecca, and I have an absolutely fabulous guest on tonight. His name is Pane, and we are talking about absolutely some of the most extraordinary pieces of information put together in such a way that it makes sense, it's logical, it flows very well. We've talked an awful lot. I left him with a couple of questions just before the top of the hour here. And I'm going to have him talk about it. And we're also going to get into a bunch of other things. We're going to also talk a little bit about chemtrails and crop circles and all kinds of other stuff. So, Pane, welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, let's start first with the questions that the respected listeners asked. There are different type of crafts which are utilized, from diamond shape to cigar shape, spherical, this type of shape, and there are many races which are utilizing them. But most common thing that is happening is they have a plasma shield, most of them, which means they can utilize that plasma shield to get resistance from the heat, from the atmospheric pressure, from the pressure in the deep ocean and similar stuff. So despite the fact that we also people have been observing the objects, moving into the volcanic openings or into the ocean, using the hydrothermal vents, they're literally going into the earth crust. And the entire concept of what the modern science is teaching us, that our planet is consisted from molten core, there's like an inner core, outer core, crust and similar stuff, not fully is accurate according to what I was able to see and experience. So the entire planet is hollow. There is a bunch of civilizations which are residing there, and there is like a polar openings, on the North Pole and the South Pole, which are contracting. Especially during my astral travels, I noticed that they were literally getting more wider and they're contracting, like following some, let's say, radio signal from the sun. And it's quite interesting that in most cases the UFOs are going in and out from those polar openings. Not much room for me to talk any further without getting into the trouble, so to speak, because it's a bit of information, which is a bit sensitive. But nevertheless, the objects which are moving into the volcanic openings or into the deep ocean, they are penetrating the inner earth, either through hydrothermal vents or eventually through the volcanic opening, because like as you mentioned, there are tubes, and I followed them in a couple of occasions, and I noticed that because with a higher quality astral body it cannot burn, but when you're with a normal quality astral body, sometimes you can feel a certain sensation, even a pain. I never found in any literature for the astral traveler to experience pain. But unfortunately, after a couple of conflicts with the so-called greys, usually people define the ETs as a couple of species like reptoids, greys, Nordics, and similar, stuff, similar groups. But it's not that easy. There are so many different beings that look very alike, very similar, but they have different agendas, and realistically, from my own experience, most of the creatures which are residing on the planet, they are neutral, they avoid contact, But the thing is, when I got into a conflict where I was using mental power on the astral plane, I was able to push, and I explained this in one of my other books, the so-called Extraordinary Powers in Humans, which I published in 2007, as those creatures were literally combining their mental force, I was not able to escape. I was not able to return to my physical body. I was lifted off the ground. My astral body was literally rotating by the pressure of the mental energy that they were putting. And I thought that was the first time that I started to question the generally believed, system that there is no spiritual death or something. The experience that I actually went through, it pushed the boundaries of that understanding, because if there were not other creatures that interfered, those are creatures was from Orska, that's a planet which is about 33 light years from Earth, which I will actually explain to in a second. They interfered, and that's how I was literally got out from that dangerous situation. Another thing which is quite amusing for the listeners, I believe, is that in 2017, the last year, in one particular moment, because when I was writing the books, The Awakening Volume 1 and The Awakening Volume 3, from time to time I was getting the assistance. I was communicating with those intelligences out there, so to speak, you know. And in one case, when I was out of the physical body, after so many years of experience, they showed me something which I didn't know before. In other words, they have frozen my astral body. I was fully awake. I was seeing where I was flying. I was seeing part of the Gold Coast, the city that I'm currently residing. Everything, but I couldn't move the astral body. They were moving me wherever they wanted. And before they returned me back to my physical body, they said, you see, the human astral body is very easy to control. And that's where it clicked to me that there is so much things that we don't know about the astral science, you know, because we need people that are capable of astral traveling for more than a couple of hours on a regular basis to do the proper observations. Otherwise, everything that we have now, it's only from the books, and people are just repeating what they have read it somewhere, you know, and they're repeating in a different forms. But what I was experiencing was quite you know, challenging, because it was pushing those boundaries away, you know, as the creatures, when I was very young, explained, you know, they said, we will allow you to experience certain things, you know. So once when you experience, you will learn from them, you know, and you will be able to understand what is happening. Another interesting phenomena, you know, which I couldn't find the answer before, Rebecca, is why they were not showing their real appearance. For example, in many cases, you know, people that experience alien abduction, they don't see the creatures at all, but they see some kind of doctors, you know. And in some occasions, I notice that the creatures are around, you know, the human body, but the consciousness of that human is out. In other words, they have the technology to introduce the so-called sleeping paralysis. Artificially, they can move the consciousness out of the physical body, and they can do genetic extraction, crossbreeding, and similar activities. You know, I'm talking about the abusive ones. But luckily, what I found is that not everyone is negative. There are intelligence out there which is quite positive. And especially in 2008, I was in full contact with that intelligence, and they were teaching me for hours. Sometimes it was just because in the first book, called The Awakening Life Force Energy, I explained a method which consists of 5 steps, or five systems, more accurately. So the first system, you know, is when a certain person becomes still, it starts to enter a meditative state. The eyes are closed, but there are no visions. There is no remote viewing or similar, you know, effects, because the pineal gland doesn't get the so-called DMT biochemical compound. There is no internal vision, you know, there is no opening of the third eye. But if someone applies the techniques which the ETs have passed to me, in other words, they block the thoughts for a certain period of time, they focus in a certain way, they use the breathing in a certain way. After 4 or 5 minutes, you know, the blackness in front of the closed eyes, it starts to fade away. It's becoming more lighter and lighter and lighter, and then in one point like a foggy surface, and then the vision starts to come, which means I'm not talking about imaginary thoughts. I'm talking about a real vision like we are seeing with the physical eyes, a real perception where you can see places that are either close or either far away, you know, through the so-called astral medium. And that's the first step of the so-called remote viewing, or observing in distance. But there's so much more that the ETs had taught me, you know, how to control even further, because most of the time when someone penetrates a meditative state and starts to see visions, you know, they're just like random visions. In one point you see, let's say, New York, and then in the other vision you see some village, you know, in Himalayas, you know, and they're just coming and going without much control. But if you focus, let's say, if you concentrate on creating a small parallel awareness and extract without using thinking, because the thinking in words is crucial. So whoever is listening to your show and it's practicing yoga or meditation or similar arts, remote viewing, I can strongly suggest exclude the thinking in words, whatever you're doing in the meditative practice, and that will provide you the second sight or the inner vision, so to speak. And once, when you start to extract the memory of a place that you want to observe, that's something what military is doing with their trained personnel into remote viewing, the force or the astral medium itself or the psionic field, whatever terminology you would like to use, it's providing the consciousness to observe the places that are desired or they are targeted. But that's just the first step. After a while, after a practice, the consciousness can perceive even deeper, which means the sound can be also extracted from the place. For example, if you see a busy street somewhere in Los Angeles, you will start to hear the noises of the cars, the people, and similar things, which are not observable or detectable on the beginning when someone is training in these arts. But the thing that I'm going towards with all this is that those visions are practically portals. In other words, if you can apply three things. First thing is, before you actually apply, you have to fully understand that it is the consciousness that observe, and the visions are coming on the mental screen with the closed eyes. So it's like two different points. So your awareness is observing. So if you push your awareness closer towards the vision on the mental screen, or eventually if you pull the mental screen closer towards your awareness, or both, you push your awareness further front and you pull the mental screen, in the moment of contact, a buzzing sound will kick off, a high-pitched sound in the ears, and someone will enter the so-called sleeping paralysis state, where you will not able to move the physical body at all. And from there, you can either project astrally out of the physical body directly in your room, or if you put additional pressure and you pass through the vision that is visible to you, you will find yourself on that particular place where the vision is coming. So what I'm trying to say is that we are consciousness, and our consciousness has been hacked by a very advanced alien software. We are using computers and hardware and software, that kind of setup at this particular moment, to utilize certain things, to perform, to achieve certain things. But we have to understand that we are dealing with at least type 2 category civilization, and even type 3, which is using the sun as a transporter system. In other words, from what I was shown and I was seeing, I have seen the star itself has a so-called sun gates, which are open to some form of cymatic sound pulses. They can alter the solar plasma, and they can open like a wormhole. So by using a physics that we are still yet to discover, all those stars that we are seeing are interconnected on a psionic medium, and those objects penetrate straight through, and they can literally travel like in a cosmic metro system. It's quite amazing. So we have to understand that we are far behind the technological advancements that those civilizations are having at this particular moment. So the question is, which is self-evident, it's logical, how come we have come into this state of amnesia? Why we don't remember who we are, why we don't really understand what is happening around us, neither why we don't really know what lies in the future. Because the answers to those questions are lying back in time, like 12,000 years or so. There was a huge, tremendous conflict which almost destroyed the entire civilization on Earth, and which was so developed. What the Asian texts like Ramayana and Mahabharata are saying about Vimanas, Astras, and other flying vehicles, and also clearly depicted on the ancient Egyptian walls, in the pyramids and other places. It was a full reality. And obviously there was a communication between the extraterrestrial intelligence and the humans. It was quite interesting that the genetics of the ancient humans was different. There were like 5 body sizes from what the evidence is showing us of humanoids, and they had some of them, they had long ears, and some of them, like in ancient Sri Lanka, India, and other places in that area, they have like a cone, like a spike on the top of the head. In other words, they were able to utilize the psionic energy in abundance. So once when I started to study, I really spent years and years into this, especially the Borobudur temple in Java, in Indonesia. The entire monument is not a temple, it's a device. You can see that because in those ancient times, the atmosphere itself was a lot bigger. Why is that important? Because the bigger the atmosphere is, there is more prana amount in it. The more prana, or the chi energy, life force, whatever you want to refer it, exists around the planet, there is more DNA abundance. In other words, we are now practically left to about 9% or so of active genetic material which we can utilize. All the rest is automatically done or controlled by the organism. We are not self-aware of the entire processes what the DNA is doing. So just to wrap this up, in ancient time, after the conflict, after all the great flood, the saddest thing that took place is degradation of the DNA functionality. In other words, in ancient times, there was appearance of gigantism. The trees were going extremely tall. Sea life creatures were very, very, very huge, big, major. The insect, the birds, and now everything shrinked. Even our glands have shrunk the functionality, and we, in those ancient times, especially the ancient yogis, they were able to build those monuments just with their thoughts. So regarding to the Borobudur temple, which I referred previously, if you can see, there's like a bells which are all around. They were utilizing the sound, but there is also spikes, like antennas. It's sad that the listeners cannot see the visual, what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to deliver here is they were able to cut, that prana, that life force, and to utilize through the geometrical shape of the device itself. And we can obviously see that there are like a meditative places in that device where the Asian people were sitting and meditating. But there is a lot more. I have discovered that there is places where they are putting their hands and they were charging with this chi energy, and also above their heads there was like a small device. And they were utilizing this device to reconnect, and they were utilizing their powers to connect their consciousness, individual consciousness, into one group consciousness. And they were able to perform group astral travels to telekinetically influence, the environment and similar stuff. It's quite amazing what the Asians were capable. It's just all over the planet. So the question is, what took place so badly that all those creatures disappeared? For example, the Egyptian culture, the Egyptian civilization disappeared out of the blue. The Mayans disappeared out of the blue. It's just one of those gaps in the mainstream, archaeology, which are still trying to find a way. They still have many theories, but the thing is, they didn't disappear. They left because they had the flying technology. And after the weapons were done and the devastation was complete, there was not much left. The earth was left flooded. Whatever was what survived, it lost the genetic functionality. And then it came, the Dark Ages and similar stuff, and now here again. And another very, very complex question appears, is that if the negative creatures, are so abusive and so on and so forth, how come we are allowed to grow technologically? We are fully suppressed spiritually, mentally, and astrally, so to speak. But to some degree, there is a movement into technological development, which means there is some kind of force which is contra pushing, so to speak, to allow us to evolve to some degree. And just to wrap this up, the ancient humans were a lot more self-aware than we are now, but the awakening is happening again because it's coming in cycles. And there are so many positive ETs out there which are connecting with the consciousnesses or with the souls, if you will, that are in the process of awakening, and they're helping. And I'm personally part of that process. But when you see the human society at this particular moment, we are seeing that the elected government or the politicians that we are seeing in the public domain, they don't run the show. They just execute the commands and the will of someone who is in the shadow, in the back, so to speak, So after all the research regarding to the UFO cover-up and similar stuff, obviously the highest establishment of the government and the military complex, they are fully aware of the ET presence. So there were so many different evidence which can support this. And for example, if you remember, Rebecca, where so many objects were flying above the White House in 1952, that there were so many of them, and they tried so hard for years to erase that from the memory of the people. So the thing is, as we are progressing, the shadow government is developing probably 50 times more than we are. In at least 5-6 decades that they are keeping all this secret to a high degree, they have full knowledge, and they have, in my personal opinion, they have fully categorized, and there is a catalog of most of the species that are hostile, the species that are not hostile, the neutrals and similar, stuff. They know who is putting certain alien implant, what's the reason, how often they come, to abduct certain abductee and similar stuff. Another point which could be interesting to the listeners is the chemtrails. There are so many different things what the chemtrails do. But obviously, one of the purpose is for the shadow government to be able to track, at least to some degree, the UFO traffic. Why I'm saying this? Because, for example, if you are on a control tower in an airport, you have so much traffic to worry about. In other words, just in the US, there's like 5,000 commercial flights, in every moment, so to speak, which are flying, here and there. And in many cases, there are accidents. UFO encounters, or sometimes the airplane goes, down. It's crashed and similar things. So with chemtrails, what is happening? Because on some occasions, especially with the UFO disclosure, which is happening, as we speak, some of the military started to step forward, and they're saying that they have recorded, especially the one in Chile, and they don't understand because it's appearing, on infrared, ultraviolet, but it's not appearing on the visible spectrum, and so on and so forth. They have created a system that, because when the chemtrails is active, and the UFO passes, the chemical compounds inside the chemtrails, it gets agitated, irritated. As soon as a certain type of plasma shield passes through, and as it passes through, as the molecules becomes agitated, the system, which is surveilling, from space, is picking up everything. In other words, they are monitoring the entire UFO traffic. It's quite amazing what is happening, and it's not just that. In high number of cases, they can literally, because the alien implants, they broadcast on certain frequencies. Not all alien implants are metal made. some have absolutely no metal at all. They are from carbon, and similar stuff, which are created, For example, some objects are easily detectable. They can be found in arms, in legs, and after the extraction, they can see that there is like a gray, surface, gray shell above it, which prevents the organism to detect the foreign body, and to cause an infection. But also, in some cases, the implants are literally put deep inside the brain. And every surgery, every attempt to remove the object, it's very, very critical, and it's very dangerous. It could result with a death. So what I'm getting at is that the shadow government, I am strongly convinced that they have the satellites to detect those frequencies, because by now the engineers have mapped, have detected and measured all the frequencies which the alien implants are emitting or eventually receiving, so to speak, because most of those frequencies are in the subspace. For example, sometimes the implant can be activated, and you're getting certain thoughts or feelings or whatever the case is, without any knowledge that it's artificially induced. They try to duplicate similar things with HARP and other technologies like a mind control and so on and so forth. And there is so much things going on realistically, But in this particular case, sometimes the flying object penetrates through the atmosphere, comes closer, towards the area where the abductee is living. It activates the implant. It starts the sleeping paralysis state. Actually, it induces the Kundalini energy rising. Especially this is happening from, let's say, 2 o'clock in the morning to 4:30, 5 o'clock, just before dawn, and similar stuff, where most of the people sleeping, and similar stuff. I have seen so many things happening. So the thing is, because there's not much time left, obviously, what I'm trying to say is that there is a way to change things around, because we are awakening. More and more information is coming out, and we are remembering more and more what was forgotten previously. Children are being born with increased genetic functionality. They are brighter, they're intelligent, to very high degree, and this is progressing. And that's why they're utilizing everything they can get, from fluoride to aspartame to electronic pollution to television cover-up, media misguidance, and putting the youth towards a wrong direction, But nevertheless, all that manipulation, there is a percentage of humanity which is resistant. It's completely immune to all types of manipulation and control, because it is happening again. The consciousness is flowering. The genetics is coming, which is taking us to the genuine crop circle phenomena. Today, most of the people, thanks to the media, and a couple of Facebook sites, most of the people, they said that they're all made by people with ropes and sticks. But in my books, I have put tons of evidence that that's not the case. There's like a 40 or percentage or so, especially in the early year of the crop circle phenomena, which absolutely doesn't match any normal criteria. For example, in some cases, there were meteoric iron, which is found inside the crop formation, and similar stuff, like two vortices of energy. You have two compasses, and you hold one in one hand, you hold the other one in the other hand, and the north is putting in one direction in one hand, and the other direction in the other hand. But what is the purpose of the crop circles at all? Why deliver them? Are there intelligent messages or so, or similar stuff? It is quite amazing, because in 2007, 2008, because as obviously most of your listeners will know, some of the crop circles are made by the so-called orbs of light, or non-thermal plasmas, which are controlled, and they have certain self-awareness. to some degree, which also are fully explained in the books. But as soon as those communications on the astral plane began, they started to transmit a high number of geometrical forms in the crop circles, and they were teaching me exactly what they are trying to say. Despite the information, for example, where they live, in one occasion they clearly stated, that their genetic is different. They have a triple DNA. They are smaller than average human size. And instead of humans that are only living in the solar system on the third planet from the sun, they stated that they are living on the Earth too, but also on Mars. And instead of Jupiter, they marked 4 dots. Because Jupiter itself, it's huge, it's massive, its gravity can crush bones. But the 4 moons of Jupiter has the suitable climate, the suitable conditions for a biological existence, if you will. And they have nothing to do with the beings which are residing around the Saturn system. In fact, the advanced alien software which is transmitted from Saturn is bothering them all. Because that's why they say that they oppose the deception. And it is quite interesting. I'm not sure, Rebecca, if you remember, the crop circle which was delivered in July 27, 2012 in UK, which was showing part of the flower of life. And there were a couple of tourists they wanted to penetrate through. But unfortunately, the military helicopter came and started to harassing them, starting to chase them away. And then as the things progressed, to very high degree, they have to move away. But as they were moving away, they were able to do a couple of snapshots with their mobile phones. And what is quite interesting is the military helicopter went directly above the crop circle and started spraying something inside the crop circle. Microwave or some kind of chemical, spray, right. Which doesn't add on. If all the crop circles are made by jokers, with ropes and sticks, which are drunk and having fun and similar stuff, how come the military is spending time and fuel and energy, to chase people away and to fly? And it's not happening only one day. From what I was informed, inside the genuine crop circle, there is an energy signature which stays active for about 6 weeks or so. So in other words, it's not just the military helicopters that are attracted to the energy source which is emanating from the genuine crop circle, but also dark UFOs. So I'm not sure if you remember the slides that I was showing you,
I do.
So you can clearly see that as soon as the genuine crop circle is created by the genuine orbs of light or balls of light, how they call them, the crop circle itself starts to create ripples into the astral layer. In other words, it's disrupting. It's like an energetic bomb, like a virus inside the Saturn's software, which exists in the astral dimension, which people are not aware of. And it's not just that. The pulsating energy is intelligent. It's divine. It literally affects people, and every time when the consciousness is ready, they are attracted to come more and more to the crop circle every new season, and sometimes they are telepathically connected with other people. So where I'm getting with this, the research that was done on the plants, it showed the nodes lengthening. For example, it was a very strong plasma energy discharge was applied. And as it was applied, the nodes were elongated, then the crop was bended in a certain way and then cooled in milliseconds. And then in that case, the plant doesn't die. In fact, it grows more, it grows bigger, and it becomes stronger atomically, genetically, and so on and so forth. But once when the problem is, once when this energy pattern becomes active, the shadow government detects this from their satellite systems. And as soon as they detect this, they send the military helicopters and they start to spray certain chemicals or certain microwave weapons. They apply certain microwave weapons directly into the crop circles. So this microwave energy is the one that is literally exploding the nodes, because the genuine crop circle makers are not killing the plant. It is the military who is radiating with all sorts of exotic weapons, if you will, which is causing the damage to the plant itself. And there is so much going on, you know. For example, there are many occasions. There is one guy. I'm not sure. He's a Dutch crop circle investigator. His name is Volker Kotjers, and he picked up very interesting video in 2006. And as he was filming in UK, 2 orbs of light came and they started to sniff around the crop field. Sniff around, and just before they flattened the crop, there were 2 black discs. They came horizontally, 45 degrees, actually 45 degrees, you know, down. And the orbs of light have noticed, you know, those black discs, and they took off before they can create the crop circle. In other words, the type 2 class of civilization, which is positive and negative, is in conflict regarding to the crop circle. And it's not just only about information sharing. It is also about the energy which is emanating and is destructing, you know, and in other case they have seen, you know, a black mist. For example, as the energy is active, as I mentioned, at about 6 weeks, the dark UFOs come, they start to circle around the crop circle, or they fly nearby, like a 200, 300 meters away from the crop design, and they released a black mist, like a black fog. So, which is caught on many of the locals, you know, which that took the photos. And this black mist is choking the divine energy which is coming from those crop circles. So just to clear this section up, in 2008, and I have actually given inside the books a full infrared photos where those orbs of light were in my presence when I was tuning into those outer states of consciousness and communicating. The thing is, it is quite interesting, when those communications were on, there were always NATO helicopters that were flying above the area where I was living at the time with my family. And it's very, very rare for that to happen, because if there is a criminal, they just send a police helicopter, you know, to sort out the situation, you know. But in this case, the NATO helicopters were flying, circulating around the suburb, you know, chasing. Everyone was just going out, you know, seeing what those helicopters are doing, you know. It just like didn't make any sense. But when I was out of the body, you know, I noticed that there is a huge orb of light which is there, you know, and similar stuff. So what they were saying, despite delivering certain information, they were telling us that there is a force field that human consciousness has to create. What I mean by force field. In other words, in ancient times, what we are seeing as a germ of life, seed of life, egg of life, and flower of life structure, geometrical structure, 3D structure. In the ancient times, that's how the cells progressed before the mutation, and we lost the genetic mutation. But we can reactivate according to what the ETs told me. In other words, in order for us to function, we need the energy. And most of that energy is stored in the so-called energy container, or the aura, where it's literally the plasma storage around the physical, the astral body, the etheric body, and the rest of the carriers which are not active at any particular time. But they said that if we apply energy, or we use so-called chi energy to fill the auric field of a human being, and then extend it to a perfect sphere, and then create additional 6 spheres which are overlapping in a certain way, fully described in the books. And once when the energy starts to move through, in other words, they are suggesting that we extend our auric field, reshape our auric field, concentrate, focus, awake, and distribute the energy in certain way through that field, apply movement which in the center, because once when, for example, if we just quickly observe the so-called seed of life structure consists of 7 spheres, 1 which is central, and 6 spheres which are overlapping perfectly in the same fashion. Once when you get that kind of geometrical structure, you gain 6 vesica pisces and 6 petals in the central sphere. In other words, those 6 petals in the central sphere, those are the charges that have to be activated with the so-called star tetrahedron in the middle of the flower of life structure. Why tetrahedron at all? Because tetrahedron itself, according to what I was shown and explained, is an isolator of charge. Like in electricity, you have plus and minus. In order for the electrical field to work, you need to have plus and minus, or a potential difference, so to speak. In this case, each tetrahedron is a plus or a minus, or a different polarities, if you will. And once when the entire structure is created, the movement, which is fully, as I mentioned, described in the books, is applied, and the energy starts to circulate in a certain way, it activates the shield to the maximum. But what is quite very, very astonishing is that once when all is done, I have tested this so many times in few years back. It's just quite amazing. It's just opening like a mini black hole in the center, and that's where the energy comes from, and it's well documented, you know, in the material that I have covered. So why is this important? Because they said that once when the field is activated and active, the consciousness, the individual human consciousness, can hook into the source consciousness, or can tune into the source consciousness and download data, not just from the previous incarnation or 2 or 3 incarnations before, but for thousands of years. It can literally regain the memory which was lost on an active plane, so to speak, you know, completely utilized. And most importantly, it can give any particular consciousness which is awakening, you know, a further clues why he or she is here, what is his or her purpose here, what did they come to do here, and similar stuff, which is quite astonishing, you know. And it's the same signature, the same messages, as you can see in the, especially in the volume 3, Key to Extraterrestrial Messages. I have decoded more than 250 crop designs. I would never done it by myself if they haven't shown me. They were literally showing me when I was entering the remote viewing mode, you know, or eventually the astral travel mode, you know, they were showing me completely what the geometries are doing, how they're overlapped, you know, and it's quite amazing. And they said that this is happening. There is dark force cannot stop this. But they were also saying that there is kind of an energetic disturbance at the edge of the solar system, which came from the galactic core. And I didn't know what to make of it at the beginning. And I started to research, you know. And then in one point, they said, you know, look for Paul L. I started Googling Paul L, you know, nothing came for a few minutes. And then I started, you know, Paul L, energetic disturbance. And then it lists a couple of links, and when I checked, you know, his ideas and his research, you know, my hair stood up. You know, he was talking about the energetic outburst, you know, from the galactic cores, you know, which are happening, you know, on periodic scale.
Right.
You know, and I started to research more and more, and then the IBEX, the Interstellar Boundary Explorer from NASA, they detect a gigantic magnetic ribbon at the edge of the heliosphere. And what is quite even more surprisingly, you know, 2007, 2008, you know, 2009, the sun stopped producing sunspots. In 400 years of the observation of sun, no one has recorded that phenomena before. And to top up about everything, you know, the thermosphere of our planet collapsed for some short amount of time. And it all happened simultaneously. So obviously there was a disturbance. And they started to show me all kind of stuff that if this energetic wave penetrate through the solar system, it will touch the star, our sun, and it will move it to the next stage of its evolution. And if that's going to take place, it will change everything as we know it. In other words, it will literally flash the entire solar system. It will destroy the advanced alien software what the negatives are using at the moment. That's why we have so much war, so much negativity around the world, so much animal slaughter, and similar things which are emanating, radiating with negative charge, because this is what is supported by this seductive or how should I put it, deceptive software, And they said that this energy will chase the negative away, and it will reprogram our DNA potential, which means it would cause a DNA reactivation. But they also said that there is a high chance that the negative ones will prevent this, because they know exactly what the penetration of this energy means. So in other words, they have a huge cylindrical ships, which are larger than planet Earth. They're huge, they're massive, and some of the crafts which the civilization Type 3 has, it's bigger than the size of the sun itself. So in other words, in 2012 and a bit prior, the Type 3 civilization started to literally release a huge black spheres that were detected around the sun, sucking the solar plasma. And as the solar plasma, sometimes it stays for hours, sometimes for days, a huge amount of solar plasma that was completely absorbed from the star itself. And as they detached, they went to the border exactly where the disturbance, where the gigantic magnetic ribbon was discovered, and they released the collected energy into the so-called gigantic magnetic bubble. Even nowadays, it is still there to some degree, and the entire solar system is surrounded by those gigantic magnetic bubbles, which the ETs are saying is just shielding the solar system. In ports, as far as I was informed, nothing comes at this stage where still that disturbance is to some degree around us to the solar system and goes out directly, because everyone that comes and goes is going through sun gates. They are not good, because if you see the images, I don't know if you remember the ones that I was showing you, you can see that those energetic bubbles are all around it. But nevertheless, despite the fact that they have stopped, the energetic wave, which was intelligent, which was completely the one from the cosmic designer itself, if you will, and capable of reprogramming, the DNA of biological life, the awakening is still happening. It's happening through us, from people like me, like yourself, and more information is pouring. But the new children that will be born, they will utilize this knowledge. They will come to take this to the next step, which means they will start to explore their psionic abilities, which are fully explained how to develop remote viewing, astral travel, and similar stuff, into the awakening volume 1 life force energy. And when they do that, they will start to explore the idea of uniting their energy. It won't be long until they start to astral travel. They start to move things around with their minds and similar things. They start to observe the alien presence in abundance. Once they were able to read the metrics properly, because now we are limited with only 5 senses, they will grow in time so powerfully that they will resist the negative influence. And that's what the importance of this information is, which means that's why we need to work towards providing those future generations the right information, the right condition, the right environment, so they can do their part of the process, so to speak. And it's quite amazing, and I'm looking forward.
Wow. Okay, now if everybody that's listening if their mind isn't blown, I don't know what else we can do for that. I heard a lot of this before when we had our first conversation, and I'm still mesmerized by it because it keeps opening up doors, so to speak, thought processes and things like that. And it's a fascinating life that you've led. And oh my goodness, and I certainly can't say thank you enough for sharing this valuable information, because never before have I had a guest on that has put together so much information on so many topics. And I know the 2 hours is very short for you, because normally you speak for 6 to 7 hours. You do a lot of visuals, obviously. So I appreciate the fact that you were here, and even in your words, and with just your words, without your pictures, your other things that you've created to go with this, you've eloquently expressed and really broadened the field, so to speak, of information and detail of what's really going on in our universe and our galaxy, and all of that. I know we have been on both the chat rooms, we have been posting your website for people to certainly go and visit, and hopefully we'll get some people to order some of those books from you. And again, it's puretranquilitypublishing.com. And from there, you can go to the books. You can look at the materials that he has there. It's just a wealth of information. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds here for you to wrap up anything else that you'd like to say before I wrap it up on my end.
Okay, thank you so much for the kind words, Rebecca. Well appreciated. My last message would be, we as humans, we have to regain the memory that we have lost. We have to change our ways. So in my personal opinion and experience, the only way is through evolution of consciousness, which means we have to start spending more time towards our self-development, to our self-change, to become more moral, more positive, and to utilize those potentials that we have. And as I mentioned, a full extraction of the training manuals are put inside both of the books which are released. So one just needs to read them and start to train, just follow the instructions. But it is quite important that this energy is shared. So the more people get this energy, the more people they will be able to take it further, extend it, and do some more valuable, bring some more valuable information. So thank you once again for having me.
Oh, well, and we're gonna set it up and have you come back on a follow-up or do something else with you here, Pane. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining in. So until we meet again, where will your life's journey lead you? Many blessings, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run.
fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country was founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to the banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Oh, Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said.